Okay, hello. Welcome to the virtual classroom. I know it's Tuesday. Today is Chuseok, so happy Chuseok. It's almost over. I ended up being sick yesterday and today, so didn't record my lecture on time, but we're doing it now, so here we are. I don't expect this to be a super long discussion. Because we need to talk in class, and I want you not just to listen, but to speak. So we'll have lots of time to speak in next class, and your next homework is based on this as well. This is chapter 2. For the Thursday conversation class, this is going to be your lecture for the holiday, the Thursday holiday that we miss. Can't remember what it is, Kechanjul or Hangul Day, but there is I think, holiday on Thursday, and so for the Thursday class, this is your chapter 2, which will be like week 5, and for the Monday class, Monday at 2 p.m., you guys are going to watch it as your Chuseok replacement, okay? So, we're going to talk about fashioning. We're going to talk about fashioning. That you can use fashion as a verb. To fashion something is to make it a certain way. So you are going to, when you have a sense of fashion, that's the way we usually say it. You can also say fashion sense. Either way, this phrase, sense of fashion or fashion sense. Do you have any fashion sense? Are you fashionable? My answer is no. And you can probably tell that by my very fancy shirt I'm wearing with a check mark on it. To me, I'd rather talk about fashion in a different way. So in the textbook, they give you some vocabulary. They talk about items a lot, fashion items. I'm not sure if they even use the word, but what they are is fashion items there. Shorts and a skirt, dresses, t-shirt, a tie, necktie, sneakers, basketball shoes, looks like a suit. There's a list there. I think you know all these words. Separating them into different types for different occasions. We're going to throw out vocabulary as we go here. A formal occasion is a wedding or an event. Maybe you won an award for best song of the year, or I don't know, you got an Oscar or something like that. If you attend a really fancy, those are the Hollywood red carpet events and stuff. If you go to those events, people have clothes that are just ridiculously expensive, I know people like their luxury brands and everything. It looks good, it does. But to me, the thing about fashion that I dislike, and that is I find a little bit depressing, is the fact that people have so many clothes that they don't need, right? If you have 200 items, how are you going to wear all of those things? There's people, not even 200 items, we're talking hundreds of items, 200 sets of clothing. Sometimes it's men, sometimes it's women, but I think women have a reputation for having more fancy clothes than men do. Not that I'm accusing anybody of anything, but it seems like people are more girls are more attracted to that because of our culture, the expectations of what women look like. And I don't know, I've always grown up with all the women around me knowing how to put clothes together to make them look good, and I just don't have it, and I don't want it, and so it's never going to happen. It is an industry. It is there's huge companies. They make, there are millions to be made by having a clothing company and marketing your clothes and selling, getting consumers to buy them and use them, or even if they don't use them. Speed fashion, micro fashion, micro trends. You can talk about the fashion industry. There's a lot of interesting terms if you're interested in talking about it that way, like I am. Then you can talk about the industry. You can talk about the environmental impact, the Industrial Revolution, which I talk about in the British and American culture class I teach extensively. It might be one of the things that causes us the most damage, in the 21st century. The fact that we have chosen to make so many products that end up polluting the earth and they end up as waste. The fashion industry is very, very hard on energy. You use a lot of water. The material we use now, the materials that are made of plastics, like polyester, definitely when you throw them away, they end up in the garbage dump and they end up as, toxic for the ground, ends up breaking into little pieces, microplastics, and that ends up, in animals and plants and eventually makes its way into human beings. So you can be fashionable and be reasonable, and you don't have to be a minimalist, and just have 3 pairs of jeans and that's it. One of my friends maybe this is an English major thing, has less to do with whether you're a man or a woman or just you're kind of reflecting on what it means. Like, what does your clothing mean? If you're a more artistic person, maybe that means that you care about your appearance and dressing up more. And maybe if you think you're some kind of philosopher, like I do, you can think about other things, and that spending a certain amount of money and time and energy on clothing, for me, is not something I want to invest in. I'd rather think about fashion than actually spend the time being fashionable. I guess that's what I'm saying. I guess that's an element of romanticism, but really it goes back to Diogenes and cynicism and living in a barrel with some dogs, only eating what you need, and just having one shirt. One of my friends said he only needed 2 pairs of jeans. I won't tell anybody who the friend is because he's still my friend now, but it is a guy. He was an English major as well. And he claimed that he only needed 2 pairs of jeans, one a clean pair that he was wearing and one dirty one that was being washed. And that's all the pants he needed. So that's a very, very narrow, practically oriented, minimalist strategy. There's a pair of nice jeans there in the textbook. A, which corresponds to number 10. It's got some stonewashed, color on it. I always like jeans. They're just so practical and comfortable. My favorite thing to wear, except in Korean summer or in the jungle when I went to Mexico, didn't enjoy wearing my jeans. But in Canada, jeans are great. You can wear them all year, even in the summer. My favorite item, definitely. If you have a favorite item and you'd like to talk about it in detail, jeans have a history as well. There's a whole, jean material being invented, and Levi's, Levi's and Strauss, these two, I think they're German or German American, came over to America and started making these clothes, and they weren't really fashionable things. They're supposed to be for like miners and factory workers and stuff, and I used to wear them when I was working on the farm in the summer, and I had a factory job in university. So they're not just fashion items, they were like workers, tough material, sort of breathable, washable. Stains come out of them pretty easily, except for if you roll around in the grass too much and turn them green. My mother always hated grass stains. So you can discuss items, you can talk about specific ones, the history of it, you can talk about the big picture, climate change, romanticism. I sort of went off track there. Romanticism is a sort of reaction to the Industrial Revolution, thinking about human beings as natural beings that are supposed to be in harmony with nature rather than try to harness it and use it for as much energy as possible. The Romantics were kind of looking at, when everybody started working in factories, you lost this human connection. Everybody started becoming a piece of a machine, right? You're using a machine, you're operating a machine, you're moving things, you're on an assembly line eventually. When the second industrial revolution starts getting to go, when they start making cars and using oil, Henry Ford invents the assembly line, and then you're just like doing the same thing all day. And that's what I did. It's a very soul crushing activity, much less rewarding than raising animals on a farm, in the Lake District in England. So a lot of poetry, a lot of painting, which reflects this idea that human beings are part of nature and that they have a harmonious relationship with their surroundings, and they're not supposed to be becoming, disconnected from their emotions and their passions and their feelings. There was a little bit of a literary revolution in England around Napoleon's time, at the end of the 18th century, which is associated with Romanticism and that idea that the Industrial Revolution was sort of destroying the best parts of human society. You can use words like chic or cool or complementary. That usually refers to how well you match something, colors and styles. You just some things don't go very well together, and it kind of makes you look less attractive if you wear the wrong colors together or the wrong pieces together. I'm constantly being told that I can't wear that shirt and those pants together, and I don't see why not. But there are some imaginary rules, I think, that everybody knows except for me and the others that don't have a fashion sense. So when you put something together that doesn't match, that's called clashing, right? Colors I can understand somewhat, but styles I can't. Just can't do styles. The way that the Industrial Revolution was driven was by, agriculture first. You needed cotton. You needed the resource first to get enough cotton to keep the machines going. The cotton mills, first in England and then other places in the world too. They needed as much cotton as possible. The American economy, when the United States became independent, was really, really heavily dependent, heavily invested in growing cotton. And the way that they grew so much cotton was by having slaves. So there was a slave society and a economy in England that developed to supply people with clothing. And now, this, I think, wasn't necessarily a bad thing at first, but the demand for it and the effect on the market was to drive the price of clothing down to the point where now making clothing, you don't get paid properly. Either the person is almost a slave or is a slave in the past, an actual slave who didn't get paid, just they lived with you and you forced them to do labor for you. Or, you know, in recent times, Nike has been guilty of this quite a bit. But I think all of the giant successful companies, especially sports brands, have been guilty in the past of underpaying people from other countries, where they make shoes all day and they only get paid $2 a day and stuff like that. It's terrible to hear that human beings use other people that way. Fair trade stuff and paying people properly, rather than exploiting, you know, developing countries in order to use their labor, is something that people are much more aware of now. And I don't know to what extent the normal person who was buying a shirt 200 years ago would really think about that unless they were actually involved in it. But I know slavery was eventually the reason that the Civil War broke out. It was an economic factor and a social factor and a political factor that changed America forever. And you know, slavery was a very common thing in many societies, but certainly the development of this industry was something that displaced a particular group of people, mostly people from West Africa, and you know, displaced them from their homes and took them away to a place far away, where their life was in some cases very, very degraded from where they were and what they were doing and what they knew, and they were intentionally used just for their labor. So I don't want you to go off track that far, you know, to explain. If you want to explain the Industrial Revolution, then you're off track. But if you're talking about clothing, if you're talking about people wearing things and how the fashion industry works, then you're safe. That's fine. They talk about different ages on page 16. I think most of you are around 20 years old, and some of you are from other countries, some of you are from Korea. The way that people dress and the way that people think about fashion and types of clothes and how much clothing they have is cultural. So there's probably some more similarities between your fashions, you know, your sense of style and fashion from within your own culture than without. I don't think I've changed the way I dress a whole lot since I was in high school. So I just wore what other kids were wearing in high school and kept wearing those type of clothes right through. And I'm a professor, so I was a student, then I was a professor, and I've since become a student again and a professor at the same time. So, you know, I don't change my clothes when I'm doing my PhD. I just walk into the classroom with the same clothes I wear, and I don't really dress up, as you may have noticed. That's partly because it's too hot for me in the classroom, no matter what the season is, because if it's winter, everybody's cold, and we end up turning on the heater, and then I'm hot too. So anyway, the seasons are one of the things that the Romantics loved. That's a rhythm of nature, and the micro trend stuff, it's not in sync with nature so much. It's just trying to do something new and make more money and generate, you know, continuous consumption, so that your brand and your company can make more money. Normally, you would wear clothing according to the weather and your climate and everything. If you lived in a tropical country, you might have the same type of clothing all year round. But certainly, if you're Canadian, you've got to change your clothes. You're going to be very cold in the winter. And there's wet seasons and dry seasons and so on, as you well know. We'll do some of this discussion in class, don't worry. But you do have to write a paragraph. There's an example of the simple verb patterns, grammatical examples on page 17. You can always prepare for your test in your interview, your midterm exam, by looking at these pages. Usually the most common thing people struggle with is grammar. That's my weak point too in my second language, French, and my third language, Korean, is my grammar sucks. I need to practice, otherwise I won't be able to pass any Korean tests because I can't make sentences that are conjugated with the right verb in the right tense. So what they're showing you here is adjectives and descriptive sentences using ing and infinitives and adjectives. They offer you 4 different verbs: like, love, prefer, and hate. They just describe your opinion about something. Pretty simple sentences. You start with the simple ones, and then you work from there. So the paragraph, the passage on page 18 in this chapter is really a good one. It is about jeans. I was mentioning it earlier. Levi Strauss introduced jeans as tough clothes for gold diggers in San Francisco. That must have been, well, I know my favorite football team is the San Francisco 49ers. So it was 1849 when they found gold there. And the gold diggers were there for a few decades. So it's 1850s, 1860s when they rolled those jeans out. So those jeans are pretty old type of clothing, surprisingly. It's when in the 1950s, though, after World War II, where they started becoming fashionable, not a worker's clothes. My mother actually mentioned this to me when I was a kid because I always wanted jeans. She's like, even when I was a kid, like, girls didn't really wear jeans that much, and guys didn't. If you dressed up nicely, you didn't wear jeans. But now sometimes jeans are, you can get your expensive jeans. You can spend $500 if you want, $500 if I'm not using slang, but we're chatting here. So $500. They do a pretty good job of just talking about the jean, history of jeans, like I said. So you're gonna have to choose a different item, but there's lots of cool things with interesting stories. Sometimes they were invented by somebody. I know the bikini swimsuit was invented by a French guy about 100 years ago, and nobody wore bathing suits like that before. It takes a lot of, what can I say, bravery to wear a swimsuit where there's not very much clothing, right? Same thing for guys. If we just wear a small bathing suit, then, I don't particularly like wearing tiny bathing suits anymore. As you get older, you get less brave about that kind of stuff. People like to tan themselves. Some people, that's part of their outfit. That's a part of what they look like. I won't mention any names here, but there's an American guy whose face is always a little bit orange because he's always tanning. He's famous, but I won't mention his name because people talk about him too much, and he doesn't need any more attention. He likes it too much. Are you a fashionista? That's another descriptive word. There's a kind of a bit of a joke going on page 20. They talk about the kilt. Some of my ancestors are Scottish, so don't call it a skirt. It's a kilt. But anyway, that's the history of the kilt is also interesting too, because it's not as old as people think it was. People in medieval Scotland were not running around with kilts. It's a more recent, sort of elegant outfit, actually, that the Scottish developed once they were part of the United Kingdom and had money to dress up nice like that. It's almost like a tuxedo, the top part of it. It's pretty cool. Okay, that's good. So thank you for listening. Come up with your ideas. You got to do this for homework. Write down half a page about fashion. Do it for homework, please. And if it's not your turn to watch it, then this homework will be due later. But Monday class, you have to do it for next week. I'll give you a few extra days because I'm uploading it tomorrow. Okay? See you in class. And only 2 days this week. So it'll be we'll be into next week again. Have a good night. Thank you for listening.